Hello, everyone. This is Attorney Abigail at Molina Immigration, going live at lunch to answer questions about immigration and talk about the latest update. We have President-elect Trump will be taking office in less than 1 week, 6 days, next Monday. And there's going to be many changes. There's already been changes, but we are here for it, and we are going to be updating everyone about the latest updates. So come on in and join us while you're eating your lunch. And let me know what questions you have. We're going to be doing an update on the Laken-Riley Act. If you saw my video last week, you know what that is. But if you didn't see it, I'm going to recap it today, let you know where that act is at in the process of becoming law, and tell you what ICE thinks about it. They chimed in on the act last week, and they said, surprise, it's a bad idea. So let's talk about why for once, ICE and I agree on something. The Laken-Riley Act is a really bad idea, and we're going to talk about why. So here goes. Here's a summary on the Laken-Riley Act. There was a beautiful young woman, 22 years old, Laken Riley in Georgia, went out on a run and didn't come home. She was brutally murdered. She was murdered by an undocumented immigrant from Venezuela. That immigrant happened to have previously been arrested for shoplifting. So apparently now there's a direct line from shoplifters to murderers because of this incident. And so Congress has decided that in order to keep murderers off the street, we need to make sure that all thieves, whether it's a large value or just a small amount of shoplifters, need to be detained by ICE and stay there until they are deported, or if they're lucky to win a case, they get released from immigration if they win their case. So this legislation was passed by the House last week, has been going through the process in the Senate. It looks like it will be passed, but it's a horrible idea, and here's why. Mandatory detention impacts people for many different types of crimes, theft included, but not for shoplifters. And so a mandatory detention means that even if a judge wanted to release somebody, let's say the judge recognized how silly this situation is to detain indefinitely shoplifters, that it takes away the authority of the judge to decide that a person should be released from detention while their case is ongoing. We know, and I can't quote the statistics, but I'm sure that the statistics support this, that once you're detained, the likelihood of you not being deported is less and less and less. Number one, because detention sucks. It's jail, basically, even though, they haven't committed, even if somebody is paid paid for their crime, they're still detained with ICE. So it's basically jail, and it sucks. And so people don't want to stay there a long time. So many people just choose not to fight their case. They choose to accept a deportation. Other people who do stay detained and fight their case, it's much harder to win a case when you're detained because you're not out being able to get your evidence together and put a strong case together. And so it becomes much more likely that you're going to be deported if you are detained. So the Laken-Riley Act would force ICE to detain and not allow them to release. Even a judge would not be able to release anyone with any kind of theft offense, even something as basic as shoplifting, because we see in the Laken-Riley situation, she was murdered by an undocumented Venezuelan who happened to have a shoplifting arrest on his record. So he, something snapped inside of him that he went from shoplifting to murder. But now Congress thinks that we need to stop all shoplifters because apparently all shoplifters are eventually going to become murderers if they are undocumented immigrants. Apparently that's the logic that's being used here. So ICE chimed in on this. If you haven't already interpreted this, I think is a horrible idea because, why do we need to be detaining shoplifters? But ICE chimed in as well, and they agree with me. So for once, we agree with each other. They think it's a horrible idea, and they say that currently they have 49,000 beds, so they can detain 49,000 people. Most of those beds are currently taken up right now. They estimate that an additional 60,000 beds would need to be added, including like additional guards and additional buildings to put those beds, that those would have to be added if they were to detain all of the people that the Laken Riley Act would require them to detain. 60,000. So I don't know if all of those are shoplifters. I'm sure some of those also include the other levels of theft, but they do not have enough beds available currently. And they said it would cost them $3.2 billion with a B just in the next year to build enough beds to house those 60,000 expected immigrants that they would have to detain, that they would be required to detain by the Laken Riley Act. So ICE says it's a horrible, horrible idea. We're talking today about the Laken Riley Act. It's passed it's passed through the House, and it's currently winding its way through the Senate. They took like an initial vote, and it looks like the majority are supporting it in the Senate. So we expect to see that pass and get signed into law. Might be one of the first things that Trump signs into law next week. And I think that this is a situation. A great example of people who don't understand immigration, but are creating laws in our country and are responding to something that, yes, it was horrible. It was, horrific what happened to Laken Riley. I don't condone it at all, but it makes an example of that situation. And by trying to, basically group together all undocumented immigrants who are accused of a theft crime need to be detained indefinitely, because they might go out. The next thing that they might do is go out and murder. The other change that this legislation would make is that not only convictions would make someone ineligible for leaving detention, but also anyone who is accused. So even an arrest, a suspicion. So even if the case has not been actually finished, has not been found to for sure be guilty of this crime, ICE would be required to detain those individuals. And here's what happens. I see this in practice all the time. Someone's arrested. They are maybe released on a bond at the county level or the city level or the state level. And then ICE picks them up even before their case is completed. And so they have not been convicted yet. They have not been found guilty of a crime yet, but they're taken to ICE detention and they sit there while their deportation case begins. And so they have an open case with the state, the county, wherever that happened, that they can't actually finish, because it's not like ICE is going to be like, oh, here, let me transport you to your hearing for this shoplifting case. I'm in Eugene, Springfield, Lane County, and the closest detention center here is in Tacoma, 6 hours away. So they're not just going to drive somebody down here for a hearing. They might be able, if the person has an attorney, they might be able to arrange a remote video appearance or something. But what happens like 99% of the time is that person is not able to go to their hearing because they are detained by ICE. And so then they have an arrest warrant issued for failing to appear to that hearing. So this legislation, the Laken Riley Act, would require ICE to detain indefinitely individuals who have not even been convicted of a theft crime, but just accused of something as minor as shoplifting. It's a horrible idea. Horrible idea. Like I said, they don't have the resources to do it, because they would need 60,000 more beds. That they would also need people to guard those beds. They would need buildings to put those beds in. They would need people to cook the food for the individuals who sleep in those beds. So it's this whole system that is under-equipped for that number, they estimated, ICE estimates that there would be 60,000 undocumented or even documented, because this could apply potentially to permanent residents who get arrested for shoplifting. So it's just, it's good in theory. I can see where they, there was a lot of public support for the family of Laken Riley. Even the father came out. I don't know if you saw my TikTok on this, but the father came out when it happened. This was spring, I think February, March of 2024. So even the father came out and was like, hey, this, I don't like that she's getting this case is getting so politicized. But it happens, right? It happens all the time that people take one horrific thing and then generalize it to a group of individuals and say that this is like happening, all the time. And it's not, right? It's not happening all the time. This is a horrific event that happened. We don't know what snapped in this individual's mind that he went from, a shoplifting arrest to now he's in prison without parole for murder. He was found guilty of this crime. So that's what concerns me the most, is just the generalization of, and this anti-immigrant sentiment, that these unfortunate circumstances that happen, it's used in order to say, here's an example. This is why we need to stop immigration. And it's just not true. It's taken out of context. And now it's going to be used, once this is signed into law, ICE will not be able to release anyone who has a theft arrest or a conviction. It's horrible. It's going to be a horrible law. So I'm curious if anybody has any opinions on it, what you think about it. I'm also on TikTok if anybody has any questions related to immigration history. So if you know someone who has a theft arrest or a theft conviction and they're undocumented, this is going to severely impact their ability to be able to fight their case, because once you're detained, it's much harder to fight a case. It goes much faster because they're detained and they're trying to process it quickly, so the person doesn't have to stay detained waiting for a decision. So that makes it harder for the attorney, harder for the family to put evidence together to make a winnable case when they're detained, and especially if they have no option for release. I'm afraid that many people are going to end up being detained by ICE, and then are going to find out, like, because of a shoplifting arrest, maybe it was even dismissed, that they are going to be held without bond. It's wrong. It's wrong. And even ICE says it's wrong because they don't have the funds in order to comply with this new law. Once it gets signed into law, they're going to have to detain up to their estimates 60,000 individuals with theft arrests or history, and they don't have the bed space for it. They don't have the resources. They don't have the manpower to take them into detention and to hold them there. So their response was, hey, if we're going to be required to detain 60,000 shoplifters, who's going to end up being released? Because we don't have the beds for this. So currently they've got 42,000. They've got 42,000 beds. 39,000 of those are filled up. So how many of those are they going to have to release in order to comply and fulfill this requirement through the Laken Riley Act, which is not yet law? I want to say that again. It's not yet a law, but it's passed through the House, and we expect the Senate to approve it soon, and then it will be signed into law. Probably one of the first things that Trump does when he takes office in 6 days, guys. I don't know if you're ready. I've still been in a little bit of denial about Trump taking office. There are allegedly 300 executive orders that he intends to sign on the first day, and that 25% of those are immigration related. So about like 75-ish executive orders that are expected. Nobody knows, it's not been leaked like what those are, but we do know that many of them are going to be modeled after Project 2025. So Monday's a big day, guys. We're going to be following it carefully and updating you and letting you know what each of those executive orders are, how they will impact immigrants in our country. So stay tuned for that. If anybody has any questions, happy to answer those here. Hamad, how long will it take the MVC to send the interview letters for an F2A? It depends on the country. It also depends on if you've finished all of the requirements at the National Visa Center. You have to do the DS-260. You have to file the I-864, affidavit of support, all of the supporting documents for both of those applications. And then it depends on the consulate, like how quickly they can get you scheduled for interview. Yeah, and to make sure that the priority date is current and that it hasn't retrogressed. The priority dates can go backwards. Thank you, everyone who is joining. También hablo español. Estamos aquí platicando sobre la legislación de Laken Riley, una joven que fue matada, asesinada. Fue una situación horrible, pero ahora el gobierno está tratando de hacer un ejemplo de su situación, porque ella fue matada por un inmigrante indocumentado de Venezuela, una persona que había estado arrestado por hurto, un robo muy, muy menor. Y ahora la legislación quiere hacer una ley que dice que inmigración tiene que detener y no puede dejar salir del centro de detención cualquier persona que tiene una convicción o por lo menos un arresto para cualquier tipo de robo, sea serio, de mucho dinero o sea mínimo, como un hurto. Así que va a ser algo muy, muy mal para la comunidad inmigrante, la comunidad documentada como residentes o indocumentada, porque el hecho de estar detenido es algo que sabemos que no es un lugar cómodo. ¿Cómo va a mantener la familia si la persona que está detenida es la persona que normalmente está trabajando para proveer para la familia? Esto va a ser muy difícil para las familias y para la comunidad, sabiendo que es aún más difícil ganar un caso cuando está peleando detenido, porque es menos tiempo que tiene para preparar su caso, porque el caso va más rápido y también a veces la gente se enfada de estar detenido, entonces requiere o pide su deportación en vez de pelear su caso. Entonces va a ser algo muy difícil. Incluso también inmigración, ICE está diciendo que no se puede cumplir con los requisitos de esa legislación porque va a requerir más o menos 60,000 personas más detenidas y ahorita solo tienen capacidad de tener 42 millón, 42,000 personas detenidos. Entonces, ahorita tienen 39,000 personas detenidos y no se puede pues construir lugares tan rápido, no se puede ocupar personas para ser agentes tan rápido. No hay espacio ahorita para 60,000 más personas. Entonces, ellos van a tener que dejar salir personas que tienen delitos aún más serios. Entonces va a ser muy mal. No va a tener el impacto lo que ellos dicen que va a tener y va a hacer daño a muchas familias, muchas personas. NDC, you're a nurse under TPS. Can a lawyer file your green card without the employer? What are the options? Definitely make sure you're talking with an attorney about your other options besides TPS. We know that Biden excuse me, Biden did renew for certain countries, Haiti, El Salvador, Sudan, Venezuela. I think there's one other country in there. Some of them were renewed, but we expect that that's one of the things that Trump said he's coming after. So make sure that you're looking at other options besides TPS. Big Papa HQ. What can I say about VAWA? VAWA is amazing. It's amazing in many ways, and I highly recommend anyone who thinks they might be eligible for VAWA to reach out to an attorney. It is a benefit to protect spouses, children, and even parents of U.S. citizens. Even if you are now divorced from your spouse, if the divorce was less than 2 years ago, you can still qualify for VAWA. You have to file it within that 2-year period. It's for people who have been physically abused or subject to extreme cruelty. So there's many different ways to establish that. Does not require a police report. In some cases, the only evidence we've had is the immigrant's detailed statement, but there are other ways to prove it as well. So it's a great way to get someone a green card without having to apply through a family member. You don't have to be separated from that family member. You could still be living together. Many relationships are complex and complicated, and you can go through good times and hard times. And so it does not require that you separate or that you be together. So either way, it also helps people avoid the 3 and the 10-year bar for unlawful presence. So if you entered without inspection and you're not eligible to adjust status, you can still adjust status through VAWA. It does not forgive the permanent bar, the 212A9C, for if you were here and then you left and you came back, or if you were deported and you came back after 1997. It doesn't forgive that, but if you can somehow tie that departure to the abuse, like my abuser forced me to go against my wishes, then you can overcome that. So what do I think about VAWA? I love VAWA. We do a lot of VAWA cases here. I highly recommend it. Take a look at it. Christina, you're a U.S. citizen. Is it better for you to apply for him or his 21-year-old daughter? He came in undocumented. Christina, talk with an attorney about that. If you don't have one, we give a free discovery call process, 541-653-8899. You can talk about the pros and the cons for each of those. You're going to need, if someone came in without a visa, they're going to need a waiver, assuming that they're eligible for a waiver. And so that'll be something that you'll discuss with the attorney when you're checking that out. Someone asked about DACA. So like I said, we're waiting to see what happens on Monday once Trump takes office. He has like 300 executive orders. Something like 25% of them are immigration related. So we're going to be looking through that, spending most of the day Monday, trying to figure out what is the new status of DACA and TPS and all these other applications that he has threatened to do damage to. RC, can a DACA recipient that has had their permit for a few years apply for residency? There's many ways of getting a green card for people that have DACA. It usually requires through marriage to a U.S. citizen, or there's some ways to do it through an employer as well. Make sure you're talking with an attorney about that, because we are concerned about what is going to happen to DACA. How long do you get your Social Security number and your work permit after the VAWA case is filed? That's a great question. It depends if you're filing it together with the adjustment of status. If you're doing it through a relationship with a U.S. citizen, either parent child or spouse, then you can file it together with the adjustment status. You should get your work permit and social security number about 3 to 4 months, maybe 6 months on the long end. Sometimes you're not eligible to file the VAWA together with the adjustment of status green card. So you have to wait until the VAWA is approved before you can get your work permit, which is taking about 2 to 3 years. So definitely check in to see if you're eligible to file it together with your adjustment of status. You will get a work permit much faster that way. Great question, Bickles. Oops. Okay. A friend came with ESTA. That's a visa waiver, so they don't need a tourist visa to get in from certain countries. Had a daughter here who was born with medical conditions, needs continued care. Definitely need to check with an attorney about how to extend that. I'm assuming that they're probably well beyond their 90 days by now, but there might be some options for that. So give us a call, 541-653-8899. Just scrolling back to see if I missed any. We're talking today about the update for the Laken Riley Act, and it has not passed the Senate yet. It's going through all the processes that have to happen there, but we do expect it will pass that. ICE put out a statement last week saying, this is horrible, guys. This is not going to fix anything. Just because this one murderer was arrested for shoplifting does not mean that we need to permanently detain all undocumented shoplifters. It's going to be potentially 60,000 people that they don't have space to house. And this is what I was saying when Trump took office, is like, yes, here's what they're threatening to do. Here's what they're promising to do. Depends on what side you're on, whether you like what they're doing or not. But then there's what they're actually going to be able to do. ICE estimated that it would be $3.2 billion that they would need in funding just in 2025. I'm not talking about like future years to come, but just in 2025, in order to house 60,000 more individuals. They only currently have capacity for 42,000. So if they don't get that extra funding, then they're going to have to make a decision which of those 42,000 they release that could potentially be even more violent than the shoplifters that they are being required to detain under the Laken Riley Act. I don't know why I keep saying Lincoln. If you guys were following this, she was murdered, I think, in February or March of 2024. And it just quickly became something that MAGA, latched onto. And I don't want to minimize the situation, and I feel for her family, but even her dad was saying how upset he is about this being so politicized. She could have been murdered by anyone, and it's very unfortunate that it happened to be an undocumented person from Venezuela. But there's no way that you can logically connect the fact that someone who was arrested for shoplifting eventually became the murderer of this young woman. But that's exactly what's happening with this legislation, is connecting it's just not plausible. It's not likely, right? But it's easy to make an example out of this and say, yes, we're going to crack down on illegal immigration, and we're going to crack down on criminal immigrants. And that's what Trump he ran on. Those were his campaign promises. And that's what I guess half of America wants or feels like is a problem. But I'm concerned that they feel like it's a problem because of this, because of the way that it's presented in the media, and just the the overgeneralization. You know, this is not something that is common. This is something that is like an example that's plucked out and said, hey, here's what happened. This was horrible, and we're going to make an example out of it. And that's what I have a problem with. Account. Are those with a working permit under the U visa bona fide safe? Yes. I think that if you have your work permit and it's valid and you have a bona fide finding for your U visa, you should make sure that you carry that work permit at all times. Make sure that it's valid. Make sure that if you need to renew it, that you renew it with plenty of time. Unfortunately, all of us, especially if your skin color is darker than mine, everyone will be in a situation where they could be potentially asked for proof of their legal status. And that's just where we're heading as a country. I don't agree with it, but I think that it's time that we be prepared for it. Gracias a todos que están entrando. Israel, is there a way to get a permit with a business? Sometimes. It depends on your situation. The longer that you're here undocumented, the harder it will be to get status through a business that you've created. But there are some options. So it's definitely worth it to talk with an attorney to see if you might have any options. Okay. We just had, in our community, we had a resource event that I was really excited to participate with on Saturday. I felt like I was kind of thinking, okay, here's what happened. When after the election, I was thinking about ways that we could support our community and get information out about what to do if you're in contact with ICE. And I did a virtual event. And in my mind, I was thinking maybe virtual events would be better than in-person events just for safety reasons. But I've changed my opinion on that. And here's why. So we had an in-person event on Saturday. Really grateful for the organizers that put that together in our community. And I'm hopeful that they'll do some more in the future, and I will participate in the future. And here's why I changed my mind on it. Because for me, it was beneficial not just for the immigrants and their families who came and got the resources, but also for as someone who's tabling and providing resources. It was encouraging to me to see the other agencies come out and to be reminded how many people are supporting and working to support immigrants in our community. And it was encouraging. It was inspiring. And so I realized in that moment, like, how we need to work together and we need to support each other. We need to lock arms and really, in order to survive the next 4 years, we really need to be there for each other and encourage each other. And then to see the response of the community members who came in to the event, who received the resources, who were encouraged and empowered. So I was so happy that I participated in that because it changed my mind about doing in-person events. Now, that's not to say that, like, if we decide in the future that that it's no longer safe, of course, we're not going to put the community in danger. But to me, it was a great way to draw everybody together, to give out important resources, and to connect, also the agencies to be able to connect and encourage each other. So I'm going to be working on some more resources to provide on social media. Like I said, we did a virtual event in Spanish that provided some information about what to do if you have contact with ICE. I was just talking with Head Start this morning about how to support their families and the students there. So I'm happy to see that the community is starting to make plans and and take steps in order to support immigrants in our community. And I am honestly, I'm hopeful that that's the result across the board, that as a nation, we start realizing how much our communities depend on immigrants, how this nation was founded by immigrants. That's why I believe that immigrants make America great. And so I'm hopeful that part of the backlash, maybe the unexpected, the undesired result of Trump winning, is that those of us who are pro-immigrant will become more loud, more proud, and more active in our communities. Melly, you're approved for prosecutorial discretion by ICE attorney to open and dismiss with a new update. Are you okay? That's great that you were able to get prosecutorial discretion. I just saw on another Facebook group of attorneys that the ICE attorney in the hearing today announced that effective Friday, prosecutorial discretion is gone, which we anticipated, but it's like each of these new announcements are just going to be a reminder of our new reality. Definitely talk with your attorney about the next steps for that, but congratulations that you were able to take advantage of the last days of prosecutorial discretion. Hopefully others have also been taking advantage of that as well. It's going to be a long 4 years, but like I said at the beginning, we are here for it. Please reach out to us if you are in need of immigration support, 541-653-8899. I'm jumping off for now, but join us again for Live at Lunch Immigration Updates. We'll talk with you soon. Take care.